Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And today we are going to look again at the topic, why is it that Jamaica and Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago are silent on well, shouldn't say that they're silent because, Trinidad and Guyana are very, very much aware of what is happening, and they are making their pronouncement in terms of they have sided with the United States. So, war in Venezuela, why Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana refuse peace while Barbados stands alone. Barbados seemed to be among the four Caribbean giants or four Caricom giants. That's, the Guyanese begin to say, oh, we're not Caribbean citizens, we are South American citizens. Well, you are a part of Caricom. So Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana, the three giants, the three out of the four giants of CARICOM, Barbados, the only country which seems to be standing for peace between the United States and Venezuela. As the United States pushes closer to war with Venezuela, Caribbean nations are taking sides. Barbados has called for peace, but Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana remain silent or supportive of U.S. actions. What does this mean for the region's future, and why are our leaders afraid to challenge Washington's war agenda? In this video, I break down why Barbados is speaking out while others stay quiet, how U.S. pressure is shaping Caribbean foreign policy, the dangerous implications for Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana, whether CARICOM is united or divided on peace in the region. The Caribbean cannot continue to be dragged into another U.S. war. It's time to ask hard questions about our leaders' true loyalties. What do you think? Should the Caribbean support peace or back the U.S. against Venezuela? Comment in the comment section below. Now, this is a very interesting topic for today, and I'm sure that many people are for or against the war because, when you speak to some Trinidadians or Guyanese, they're suggesting that Venezuela has threatened their territory and that they have to defend themselves, and the United States is helping them to defend themselves. Then they are willing to work or to collaborate with the United States. But we have to look at history, and we've got to look at the modus operandi of the United States of America. Is she trying to cement peace? Is she trying to defend territory, or is she trying to control the world? These are very important questions that we have to ask ourselves in light of history, in light of what we're seeing in politics from day to day. And based on what we can see, we understand that the United States is doing none of the above, none of the aforesaid, the aforementioned. Okay, so we need now to get out of that delusional world and begin to understand that we cannot depend on a global empire to protect us. In fact, she is more a threat to our peace and security in the region. No empire has ever loved peace and security. They have always loved to war. In fact, war is a scam. Okay, and we have to understand that. And the more wars are waged, many of them are waged on false premises and pretexts. And we only have to just read history. And it doesn't mean history that happened long ago. It could be recent history that we have often forgotten, that we have, not stored in our memories so that we can make connections. And one of the things that we lack in the Caribbean region is that ability, that capacity to make connections. Connections are not easily made for us. And that's a problem. We also have a dearth of journalism in the region where the papers are actually working for large conglomeration of corporations. And so they reflect the ideas. Because remember now that war is also economics. It is profitable. So many companies that control a lot of the media support wars. They pretend as if they don't because they have to fool you up, they have to trick you, they have to deceive you, they have to hoodwink you into believing that, oh, yes, we are a democratic society, so we have both sides of the story, and they're pretending as if they are not war hawks. But behind the scenes, when you look at who wields the power behind these institutions, you'll understand that they are in fact behind the wars that are being waged. Now, there is a story, an article, I should say, that came out in the Black Agenda report this morning, and it says here the title of the article is Guyana, a Pawn of U.S. Imperialism, and it is written by Gerald A. Pereira. Think I should invite him on the show. Now, the recently concluded Guyanese elections spectacularly reinforced my claim that liberal democracy is a bogus concept, one of the biggest cons ever invented and thrust upon humanity. Wow, what a way to begin an article. The incumbent People's Progressive Party, Civic, that's the PP /C, won the elections with an increased majority. A third new party, We Invest in Nation, would win, led by Forbes-listed billionaire Azruddin Mohammed and sole heir to his father's family fortune, a fortune that makes them one of Guyana's richest families, has now replaced the long-standing Partnership for National Unity, that is the APNU, which means that Guyana is a technocratic state, is run by technocracy as the official position. So the APNU, which was the former third party, it seems, is actually the PNCR, the People's National Congress Reform, in a coalition with some parties that only exist on paper and have a handful of members. Now, whether in the advanced capitalist societies or in the countries like Guyana, voters are actually bought with cash, favors, and benefits. That's what we're hearing coming out of Jamaica also, and that happens on both sides of the political spectrum. The unspoken but well understood reality in Guyana is that the only way to get ahead and survive economically is to pledge allegiance to those who wield economic and political power, regardless of their corrupt and oppressive rule. This is locally referred to as drinking soup. Oppose them openly and you ask victimization and impeding your chances of gainful employment and commercial success. This is an effective way of exerting control over and pacifying a population, and obviously has nothing to do with democracy. The world over, in every country where the liberal democratic arrangement is in place, the nexus between political and economic power is cemented. And that is what we have. There is a nexus between political and economic power. Some things that we have to understand, we've got to really delve into, or we are going to be deceived. The winners of elections are, with few exceptions, those who have the largest amount to spend on extravagant circus-like campaigns. And we saw that time come, and in Jamaica they were having a festive celebration, thinking that Andrew Holness has won the election and he is going to take charge of our economy. That is far from the truth. This nexus forms the basis of the creeping fascism we are witnessing worldwide. So here he's saying democracy is a con. It is a deceptive political theoretical framework. Okay? The proponents of the Western multi-party system claim that democracy is rooted in the fact that any party can compete on an equal footing in the electoral process to form a government. It is therefore claimed to be a system of, for, and by the people. Furthermore, its proponents claim that the more parties that compete in the electoral process, the more democratic the process. They are wrong on both counts. And now, after years of this system being enforced worldwide, its flaws and failure is clear for all to see. All right? So that is what is happening. Now, here he's going to make the point in terms of Guyana being a pawn, a puppet of the United States of America. Hence the claim that the more parties that compete, the more democratic the system is fallacious, since no matter how many parties compete in the elections, no real change can occur if they all subscribe to the neo-colonial arrangement and the Washington consensus with its neoliberal capitalist agenda. Not one of the parties that contested the 2025 elections dared to question these two doctrines, but rather treated them as given. I saw the Dion Jackson Millers and all of the people also, and I'm happy he made this point because I made on my live last night. Okay, I made this point on my live last night on previous videos that I have also made, that I have uploaded. And remember now to go on to like and to share and to subscribe to the channel. Okay, because this is the thinking channel. Because we're not here to play games at this juncture of the history. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that during the elections in Jamaica, also as Pereira is suggesting that happened in Guyana, none of the journalists dared to pose the question about the IMF and the Washington consensus model, the neoliberal economic framework from which our politicians are working. None. Okay, Jamaica, which is under a very rigorous, a very austere IMF program, which have sacked, hundreds of maybe billions of dollars out of our economy, sucked us dry, even left our National Housing Trust, the other, an entity that was actually engineered by Michael Manley to have built homes for poor people. They have when they've gone into the funds and have stolen. In fact, it was Mark Golding who accused, and Andrew Hollis never defended that point. He never, negated what Mark Golding said. So it could be true that under the GLP regime, maybe it was during his 10 years in office, his first 2 terms in office, that the NHT, the National Housing Trust, was built of over, I think was $135 billion, if I'm not lying. 135 billion Jamaican dollars. Okay? So we need to put these things into proper perspective and understand that these people are working together. And the IMF agenda, I was, talking to a friend of, well, not a friend, but some of the participants on my show last night about the IMF target goal. Jamaica's target and the IMF target, the IMF target is not in alignment with the development of Jamaica. So when we're talking about we have reduced our debt to 62.4% of GDP, that is not going to help us because the IMF is not just there to lower debt. They're there to destroy your economy so that you can become dependent on Washington and the West. That is what they're there to do. But we have not yet learned our lessons, having been with the IMF since the 1960s, I understand, or possibly earlier. Okay? But I'm happy that Pereira has made this point. So this is what we're doing. Not one of the parties that contested, as he's saying, the 2025 elections dared to question these two doctrines, but rather treated them as given. So the neo-colonial, neoliberal doctrines are given. They are set in stone. They are all well aware that without the blessings of the US empire, they will be prevented from taking office by the ballot one way or another. I repeat that. They are well aware that without the blessing of the US empire, they will be prevented from taking office by the ballot one way or another. And it is frightening if you are reading the news, if you are up to date, if you are current on what is happening in the political realm globally. But let us look at what is happening in Venezuela, el país de Simón Bolívar. All right, let us look at what is happening in Venezuela. The fact of the matter that the United States has the audacity, has the temerity to call the state a narco, what they call it, a narco trafficking corporation, something of the sort, right? They say that it's not a country, it's not a state. The United States has that fundamental right, or pretends to have that right, to denounce that country, that nation state, El País de Simón Bolívar, right, as a country that is just a narco trafficking corporation, right? Now, where is that coming from? Where is the allegiance to international law? Shouldn't that have gone to the United Nations if the United Nations is real? Or is the United Nations a bogus entity that we can't even believe in? I have never believed in it, but perhaps you do. All right? But it shows you, it is unpacking, it's unmasking the hypocrisy that we have in the political realm, not only domestically, but also at a global level. A crisis out of proportion. Okay? Because when you think about it, the United Nations, if it were real, should have been able to be the one who should have been consulted to ask whether or not Venezuela is a nation state. And as far as we know, Venezuela is a nation state. It has its problems, just like the United States does, or just like any other country in the world. But you can't brand an entire people, 30 million of people who live in that country, as a narco trafficking corporation or organization, right? That is what the United States has suggested. Okay, and this is what we're going with, the Kamala, person be Caesar, and the likes of Dr. Irfan Ali of Guyana. That is what is happening. Now, he's suggesting, the Pereira is suggesting, that without the blessings of the United States, then these prime ministers or presidents cannot win. They can't win. Okay? And that is why I was very skeptical that Mark Golding would have won the election in Jamaica. I was very skeptical. I did not think he had the competency. I did not think he had the level of geopolitical understanding and sensibilities for the US to want to work with him. I don't think they wanted to work with him. I didn't think that they were going to give him their blessings. But anything goes. We never know. Sometimes the United States can use even the softest and the most inexperienced person to carry out their agenda. So you can't put anything past them. Nothing is definitive. Nothing is unequivocal in this world. So I watched. But there's something in my mind that I don't think that they will be giving up Andrew Holness, who has shown himself to be in accordance with what the US is doing and the US's agenda globally. I don't think that they were going to give him up. But as I'm suggesting, anything in this world is possible, because also politics is about deceiving and also being deceived. And that is what you've got to understand. And he himself can be deceived and can be, what we call it now, he can be, the word has gone from my tongue, betrayed. He can be betrayed by his own colleagues. Now, the line is drawn, the deal is done. The neocolonial and neoliberal arrangement remains firmly in place. US military maneuvers off the coast of Venezuela are part of a diabolical plan to lead us into a war with our neighbor, a war in which neither country will be winners. In Guyana, the grip of the United States on every aspect of our national life intensifies by the day. Big oil coupled with a neocolonial regime firmly in place solidifies our status. We are by all measures a captured state. And Jamaica is too. All right? And I don't want you to come and tell me that, oh, we are not in that war. It's between Venezuela and the United States, okay? It is going to have grave impact on you. The war in the Ukraine is having grave impact on oil prices around the world. We saw where the United States blew up the pipeline that was running from Western Europe rather, to Russia. Okay, and now the entire the Western European countries, have to depend on the United States for oil, which has actually crippled their economy. In fact, Germany has become deindustrialized, all right, because of the fact that they can't get oil and the energy to produce what they want to produce. Okay, so anything that is happening in any part of the world will in fact have very deleterious effects on our islands in the Caribbean Sea. I remember also when the war with the Ukraine, when the war in Russia and Ukraine started, that, the United States, the embassy, asked Jamaica, the US Embassy in Jamaica, Washington asked Jamaica to get Russian investments out of the country. So we had investments in bauxite and perhaps in other sectors, in the mining sector in Jamaica. And we had to get rid of them. And that was a part of our economic, arrangement to grow our economy. Right? So talk about, oh, it is not going to impact us. It is because you cannot make connections. And then you come and you write all of this, illiterate comments in the comment section, not understanding that these things are going to affect us one way or another. Okay, even our Chinese investments, we are not sure when the US is going to ask them or ask Jamaica to have them go. And if they go, what's going to happen to our economy? Do you think the United States has the money, the economic power or wherewithal to take care of us, to invest in Jamaica and to create jobs? They don't. They don't even have it for their own people. So how do you think we are going to survive? Do you think Andrew Holness is going to make bread out of stone? And has made a lot of promises in his speech yesterday, in his inauguration speech yesterday. Lots of promise, fluffy promises. But he knows that he will not be able to fulfill them. He knows that, but he has to rev you up and make you feel that you vote for Andrew, vote for Labour, and you have to choose Jamaica, right? And while you're choosing Jamaica, you don't care what happens in any other part of the world, because guess what? You're just protected by those, the Caribbean Sea. And even though warships are in the Caribbean Sea, you think you're protected. Now, what is in your head? What is in your head? Excuse me. How are you thinking? Okay, I don't know. And these are the fundamental questions I am posing to all of you, right? Now, the day after President Ali was sworn in, a delegation led by U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of War for the Western Hemisphere, Joseph Umir, flew into Guyana to intimidate and bully under the guise of guaranteeing Guyana's security, in particular with regards to our neighbor, Venezuela. The very day I would like to see what is going to happen to Andrew Holness. The world is now witnessing the full extent of Donald Trump's ability to deceive. Even many of his MAGA supporters are now coming to the realization that this man is a pathological liar who has no trouble lying to himself, his party, his allies, and his own people. But that is what politicians do. Whether it's Donald Trump, or it is Joseph Biden, or it is Barack Hussein Obama, or Dr. Andrew Michael Holness, they are tasked with lying. The Trump administration's attempt to portray President Nicolas Maduro as a drug trafficker is laughable. I doubt that there is anyone anywhere in the world who actually believes that story concocted out of the blue. Well, Mr. Pereira, many do. Many people do. The world has been to this rodeo before. It is straight out of US imperialism's book or playbook, and this is a particularly crude and scandalous attempt to demonize yet another leader who refuses to submit to the hegemon. So confident are the Anglo-Saxon terrorists in their ability to get away with murder these days that they are not even bothering to concoct pretexts that make any sense. Because the people in the world, Mr. Pereira, there are few people in the world who are able to make connections, Mr. Pereira. And for that reason, many people are buying into the narrative. Many people, Mr. Pereira, unfortunately, are buying into the narrative. The real reason that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is a threat to the US is because the revolution dares to shout from the rooftops, "We are in nobody's backyard," a phrase first uttered by Caribbean freedom fighter and leader of the Grenadian Revolution, Maurice Bishop. But we know what happened to Maurice Bishop of Grenada, that they went down there and they unalived him. Very important that we remember these historical, very important that we begin to make connections with these historical moments. Right? The entire region, even the traitors and sellouts amongst us, know that this is not drug trafficking. And that Nicolas Maduro's, well, let me repeat that. The entire region, even the traitors and sellouts amongst us, know that this, not drug trafficking, is Nicolas Maduro's crime. And when he says this, he means that they are saying, Venezuela is saying that they are in nobody's backyard. Like his predecessor, freedom fighter Hugo Chavez, he boldly rejects the geopolitical and historical fatalism that plagues this region. Venezuela has very close relations with the People's Republic of China, who came to their rescue when US sanctions threatened to cripple the economy. And that is Venezuela's crime, daring to exercise their inalienable right to freedom of association and self-determination. Right? So this is what we're talking about. As we see the Caribbean build up, the US build up into the Caribbean Sea, we can see that the US is behind what is happening in terms of the decisions that our leaders in the Caribbean are making, including in Jamaica. As he suggested here, as Mr. Pereira suggested, no prime minister or president in the region, all right, will be able to become prime minister, to be inaugurated as prime minister without the blessings of Washington. Okay? Despite the access of assistance, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago, with Guyana leading the charge, there are many voices in these three countries and throughout the Caribbean, Central and South America that will not stand for regime change in Venezuela. As we stood up globally for Burkina Faso, having learned from the Libyan tragedy, so too we must say hands off Venezuela and mean it. And mean it. So it's very sad that Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana are on board with the United States agenda for regime change in Venezuela. Extremely sad that we are not lending our support. Now, we should not side with any country. As I suggested to one of the persons who commented on one of my videos, I am not siding with any president, with Kamala, with Andrew Holness, or with Nicolas Maduro. I'm on the side of the rule of law, and let the law run its course. Let due process run its full course, and let the chips fall where they may. Got it? So that is what I'm about. I'm not here to defend the likes of Kamala Person-Caesar, Dr. Andrew Holness, Dr. Ali, Irfan Ali, or Presidente Nicolas Maduro. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to defend what is right, though the heavens fall. And that is what you have to understand. There was another article written by a professor from a Canadian university. And she says here, and it was written in the Black Agenda report, no one expected that a second Trump presidency would see a reported US military strike on a boat in the Southern Caribbean. Nonetheless, like any militarist action abroad, the aggressor needs its accomplices. If a military strike was not feasible in the past, it was because the right accomplices and environment, thus critical juncture, were not present. For US President Reagan in 1983, the most vocal Caribbean accomplice was Dominican Prime Minister Eugenius Charles. Today, for US President Trump, the most vocal Caribbean accomplice is Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamala Parris-Caesar. That both of these Caribbean women were in the strongest positions in their country advocating for US militarist aggression against states in the Caribbean region further underscores the fact that one's racial, gendered, sexual, religious, ethnic, and other identities do not and cannot prevent one from aiding a system reliant on racism, capitalism, and imperialism. On September 1st, the day before the reported military strike in the region, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Parris-Caesar, rejected claims by President Nicolas Maduro about the growing presence of US warships in the southern Caribbean Sea that aimed to target Venezuela. In PM Parris-Caesar's own words at the time, there is no evidence of any planned attack against Venezuela by the American Navy. The very next day, on September 2nd, the US did carry out a military strike against a Venezuelan boat, to which PM Parris-Caesar would respond on September 3rd in support of not only the strike, but also for the continued violent murders of alleged drug traffickers by the US military. PM Parris-Caesar's quick message of support for what was quickly deemed a summary execution in the Southern Caribbean by the US government sought to clear the use of any wrongdoing. All right, so she says that, yes, she supported it. And she's saying that, hurrah to the United States and its military for having blown up 11 members of a boat that even the AP News is suggesting was returning to shore. Right? They were returning to shore when they were attacked and brutally unalived. Wow. And yet Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana are supporting such brutal activities. Now, we're not suggesting, and we're not here to suggest that there are not some grave realities that must be dealt with. Crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago are on the uptick. And they have also been facing some brutal killings there. All right? They have. And we can't deny these realities. In Jamaica, the same thing is happening. And we're hearing out of Barbados also that they are seeing an uptick in crime in their country that was quite a peaceful country in the region. All right? So we're not here, but we have to look at the root and see what has caused, what is creating this uptick in crime and violence, and the countries and what they perhaps are sending to these countries, trading with these countries, how that could have, or how those things might have contributed to the uptick, to the increase in crime and violence that we are witnessing in the Caribbean Sea. It is time that we begin to study. And we need to also join in on important podcasts like this one and read important articles like that of Mr. Pereira's article and the article that the lady has just written from the professor from the Canadian University, York University. Right? We're filling our minds with too much garbage, and that is why we're not able to think. And when I talk on this channel, oh, you're crazy. I'm crazy because you're crazy. And you can't think because you can't make connections. And you don't want to make the connections either. But if you can make connections, you understand that something is fundamentally wrong with what is happening with this war and the ships that have been deployed in the Southern Caribbean waters. And this is not business as usual. This is a dangerous world in which we live, and every man, woman, and child will be affected by what is happening right there in the Southern Caribbean waters. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And those of you who respond quickly to the videos, I will big you up and I will leave a pinned comment. I'll pin you to my comment section. So please, and shout out to Dawn. Dawn, you're always responding to the videos, and I know you're going to respond to the video again. So hey, Dawn, and we will continue to have a wonderful series of enlightening videos. Ciao.